Good.
Good evening. My name is Terry Yoffe, and this is Coach World TV. And tonight, as my guest, I have Lee Miller. Hi, Lee.
Nice to be here.
Same,
Thank you for
thank
having
you.
me.
Lee calls himself an influencing guru and trainer on influencing and negotiating. That was a mouthful. So tell us about the influencing and negotiating, Lee.
Well, I've been at this for a long time. I started my career as a lawyer at Harvard Law School.
Oh,
I spent 7, 8 years practicing law, and then went into the corporate world, was head of labor and employee relations at Macy's, and then most of my career I was head of HR at TV Guide, USA Network, in Barney's, New York. And you learn a lot about influencing. I now teach at Columbia and Seton Hall. I teach influencing and negotiating. I do corporate training in those areas, and I do some executive coaching in the areas of influencing and negotiating.
so give us some secrets about influencing and negotiating, because certainly today that has to be the number one priority for everybody in today's uh, business landscape.
Well, I would say the secret of negotiating is to understand your audience. We tend to seek to influence in terms of what we believe, what we care about, and that's exactly wrong. You really need, if you really want to influence someone, and by influencing I mean change their behavior, get them to
Ah,
do what you want them to do.
ah,
The key is
okay.
to understand, how do they see the world, what do they care about, and then you convince them not that they ought to do what you want them to do because it's the right thing to do, because you think it's the right thing to do. It's no, they should want to do what you want them to do because it's what they care about and it fits in with their values and what they want.
So I'm sure everyone really wants to know, given that premise, in looking for a job, everybody, or those that are looking or looking to make a transition, having the influencing and negotiating in your back pocket has got to be a leg up for a lot of people. How would that work if you
Well,
could, in the short form,
in the quick,
in the
the
quick,
nutshell,
in the down and dirty?
it's actually very, very key is to understand that everyone you interview with has a different, what I call you perspective. They see the world differently. They care about different things. You are who you are. But when you're interviewing for a job, you want to emphasize not what you care about, but what your interviewer cares about. And that's going to be different, as I said, depending on who's interviewing you. Take, for instance, as I
Yeah,
was
sure.
the former head of HR, HR is looking for a candidate who is a low risk candidate. Because I always say, if I pick a superstar candidate and he's a superstar, I don't get any credit. But if I pick a candidate who I think is going to be a superstar and he blows up, I will get lots of blame. So I want to pick the safest candidate. So when you're interviewing with somebody from human resources, their you perspective is make sure that this person isn't going to screw up. So you want to emphasize that you've done whatever it is they need to be done. You've never had a problem. You've been successful. And you want to focus on your successes, but also how you've solved problems and how you've never caused problems. So that's human resources you perspective. Very different when you're interviewing with the hiring manager, the person who's actually going to hire you, your future boss, the person who's going to make the ultimate decision. That person doesn't necessarily want a safe candidate. They want a candidate who's going to help them do whatever it is they care about. The key question, again, in terms of this you perspective concept,
Yeah.
the key question I would tell a candidate to figure out and perhaps even ask their future boss is, what is it that keeps you up at night about your job? If you can figure that out, and if you can show this future boss how you can somehow help them solve that problem, sleep better at night, you'll get the job.
You know, it's interesting. I've heard Lee speak several times, and I remember one thing that stuck with me, Lee, is last time that I saw you talk was, I think you talked about the resume, that all they're going to do is kind of just look at the dates, Am I correct? And
That's
just
absolutely.
and look at, that everything is in order, and then it's up to the individual to land the job. The resume is just the calling card.
Yeah, the resume, I always call it, it's Cinderella's invitation to the ball. Once you're at the ball, you got to get the prince to want to kiss you.
That's quite a metaphor. I love it. Okay. Um, and how does somebody, aside from asking the question, what keeps you up at night, with so many candidates coming through a door, what can somebody focus on that would make them unique, and where somebody would really, what are they going to bring to the party that perhaps some others aren't? I mean, it's obviously a general question, but is there any tidbits that you could impart?
I would say it comes back to the same basic point. You've got to figure out, we all bring many things to the table.
Sure.
You've got to figure out what the person on the other side of that table really cares about. And obviously, you can ask that question, but also in part of your preparation, what you want to do is find out what's going on at the company. What are the issues? What are the problems? What is your boss or future boss likely to be focused on at that time? You can also, and I, again, back to understanding how people think and operate and what will motivate them, talk to his secretary. At some point, there's going to be a secretary who is setting up your interview. Ask them what's going on. Ask them what is their boss focused on. What's he working on? When you get that information, it will help you figure out what their you perspective is, and it will help you figure out what about you that's special should you emphasize.
Do you think that a secretary or assistant will impart that type of information?
If you treat them as human beings.
Uh,
I
there's a
remember,
key here.
I remember, and this is dating me, but back in the
Sorry.
Ronald Reagan days when Oliver North was being on trial and his secretary got got up and testified, she said something about I'm not a potted plant. And that's how most people view secretaries. They're just there. They're utilitarian. They're not people. Treat that secretary like a person. Make a connection with them. They'll be amazingly helpful to you.
Wow, that's an interesting piece of advice to offer, and that's great. Um, would you ask the person sitting across who's interviewing you, so tell me, what keeps you up at night?
I
Would you
would. I absolutely
really?
would. I wouldn't ask that right off the bat, obviously.
No, so you sit down. So, what keeps
Welcome.
you up at night?
Nice to meet you. What keeps you up at night? No, you're absolutely right. But at some point, if it flows into the conversation, because you want to ask a lot of questions in an interview, you want to ask them what they're working on, what they like about the company, and at some point, the moment will be right. You can ask that question. You can ask them, okay, in the challenges that you face when you come in the morning, when you go home at night, what is it about your job that's keeping you up at night? If you ask it at the right time, you'll get a good answer, and then you'll be able to focus your response in terms of how you might help them solve that problem.
It's great. Thank you. Even I've learned something. I love this whole you perspective. In sales, I come out of the sales world and I'm also a coach. It's always about them. It's always wanting to know what they're about and how you can fit in to what they're up to, and what they have in mind.
It's
I just
exactly right.
love that.
It's how can I help you? When you're trying to make a sale, what you really care about is how are you going to help me by giving me the sale and the money. But what you really need to focus on is how you're going to help them, because that will get you the sale and that will get you the money. Influencing is selling. When you're in the job search, what you're selling, the product is you. But it's all the concepts that I talk about, the concepts I teach, especially the you perspective concept, are critical whether you're looking for a job, whether you're selling a product, whether you're negotiating a deal.
And on that note, I know Lee has written several books, 3 to be exact. And so tell us about the books, and I know you've brought one with you that you
Okay.
might want to
Show?
show.
All right, be happy to show the book at your request. Is Up, Influence, Power, and the You Perspective. This is my book that
Is this the most recent?
no, actually, the
Okay.
most recent I'll tell you about in a second.
Okay,
But this
sorry.
is the one on influencing, and this is the one that undergirds most of my philosophy on how we influence people. This is a whole approach, a to how you can get anyone to do anything that you want. So it applies in, and we have chapters on getting a job. We have chapters on getting a raise. We have chapters on sales of a product.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how you use these concepts to get what you want. So this is not my most recent book, but it's
Mm-hmm.
probably at the moment it's probably my best selling. But I do think the newest book I wrote, which I wrote with my daughter, I co-authored with my daughter, who's a
Mm.
commercial real estate broker. It's called A Woman's Guide to Successful Negotiating. Came out last October. It's the second edition, but this edition came out last October, and I love it. And I'm hoping that will be out actually outsell this book.
Great.
And the third book is strictly about negotiating in the employment context, called Get More Money on Your Next Job in Any Economy.
Is there anyone you want to expand upon or tell us a little bit more about?
Well, the Woman's Guide I
Yeah,
like, and
that,
it's very
yeah.
interesting because people ask, do men and women negotiate differently? And the answer is yes, they do. And they do both because they tend to be inclined to see the world differently, and also because we expect them to negotiate differently. Now, I would say about 60 or 70% of negotiation is gender neutral, but the other 30 or 40%, it makes a difference. Women need to do things differently. They bring certain different strengths. Men need to negotiate differently. They bring different strengths. And if, as in many cases, because everybody's unique, if you don't fit into the, I don't want to call them stereotypes, but into the general mold, you don't negotiate in a collaborative way, which tends to be more the way women negotiate, or you don't and you're a woman, and you negotiate more in a competitive style, you need to address it. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean you shouldn't negotiate that way. But because you're basically challenging expectations, you need to deal with it a little differently.
That's interesting. It's very interesting. I know that you have done some, you do training as well.
Yes, I do
You want to,
training in the area of
yeah.
influencing and negotiating,
Uh-huh.
those two areas. I have a model that I teach. I call it the
Mm-hmm.
three C's of
Ah,
influencing:
right.
convince, collaborate, and create. It's really about once you understand somebody's view perspective, and we talk about how you get that, how you understand it, how do you actually get them to do what you want based on understanding their you perspective. So convince, collaborate, create. Convince is about how do I affect your perception of value. In other words, depending on what I would like you to do, how do I make you want to do it?
Mm.
Collaborate is about actually changing what I want you to do to work out something that works better for everybody. And create is about structure. How do I structure my interactions with you to maximize the influencing effect? Pretty,
Whoa,
pretty nice model.
it's
It
great. I
works and
know.
it's easy
Three
to teach.
C's. Three C's.
Hmm.
Um, Interesting. Do you want to elaborate or
Uh,
talk a little bit
yeah, I'm happy
more?
to talk about
Yeah,
it. I mean, I
sure. We
believe
have lots of time.
I believe if you understand how people are influenced, if you understand their you perspective, and you approach with that model, you can pretty much get anyone to do anything. You know, pretty much um, everyone's motivated by different things and at different times. Obviously, money motivates people,
Mm.
but usually you don't have enough money or want to part with it. So you look to other motivations, things like fear or greed or um, helping others. There are lots of different motivations, but if you tap into those motivations using the three C's, you can pretty much get anyone to do anything you want. Whether that's get your husband to take out the garbage,
Oh,
get
I
your
gotta.
boss to give you a raise, get that promotion you're looking for, get somebody to buy your products or services. It's all about influencing, and it's all about tapping into those motivations.